Hello, everyone, and happy Wednesday to you. Hope you guys are having a good day, a great week. Welcome to Midnight Hatter Live, where we anger people with our disgusting opinions about Gundam spin-offs. I am your host, Steven, aka Midnight Hatter. Joining me, as always, is the Blue Gamer, the Gundam explainer, Adam Blue, and joining us as well, special guest Kyle Valenzuela from Simply New Type and Free Speech Geek. How are you guys doing
Yo,
today?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling good. I'm dressed like a fascist right now. Look at my fascist outfit going on. Yeah, I'm ready. We're talking Titans. I'm good to go.
Yeah, no, yeah,
Exactly
it's
right.
good. Anything with Kyle included, we're gonna be getting into some deep diving discussions here, so
Exactly right. But yeah, there's no fascism like space fascism, is what I've been told. So, yeah, I won't beat around the bush, and bury the lead on this one. Today's topic is going to be a fun one. We actually did a video similar to this last year, or well, a live show that I should say, where we were talking about Gundam the Origin and Gundam Thunderbolt and discussing which one from a lore perspective, didn't quite fit in with UC Gundam. And, you know, full disclaimer, like canon and, lore, they're kind of loose ideas in Japanese media anyway, right, guys?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it
exactly.
doesn't matter.
And it's and
Yeah.
it and it's really neat how much it seems like it's not a big deal. Like,
Yeah,
we were talking about there's so many little things you can let bother you all the time, and it's cool that in Japan, they don't let little canon details bother them, so
No. But that's
yeah,
why it makes it so much fun to talk about. Like,
yeah.
I love
yeah.
getting into this stuff. And it's the last day of the month, we gotta get in our hate quota. But,
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, I'm gonna keep wearing these hats. My wife was teasing me, last night because my hair is growing out to absurd lengths, and I had it in a
Mm.
ponytail, and she asked me, "Was Mel Gibson a good father, and am I mad that that British guy killed me in The Patriot?"
Yeah.
Oh,
So, yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't been picked on like that since high school, so I'm definitely gonna have to do
Shaming you
something
hard.
about this mane.
Hey, man, shame works.
It
Don't let
does,
other,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Hashtag bring back bullying. It's
yeah, that's gonna go over well.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, today's topic was inspired heavily by me, almost completing I've still got the backpack to do on this, the P Bandai high grade
Nice.
Varguil. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Kyle?
I always go like Vargul. I go Vargul or
Yeah,
Vargil.
the
Yeah,
Vargoyle, kinda like
yeah.
gargoyle?
Oh,
Gargoyle, maybe?
wow.
I don't know.
Maybe that's
Gargoyle.
it, like, maybe
Yeah,
it's Vargoyle, I don't
Maybe.
know.
Oh,
But yeah,
yeah.
it
if
is
you wanna
now.
know more about the Varguile, the Vargol, over on Simply New Type, Kyle's channel, he's been covering, like, all of the Moon Gundam, manga, so definitely
Yeah,
go check that out if you have not, A, read Moon Gundam, or B, know anything about it, because Moon Gundam is gonna be one of the topics in chief today, and, of course, the other one is going to be Advance of Zeta, both Flag of the Titans and, AOZ Reboot, which I haven't read Reboot personally, have you guys?
no, just the
I've
original.
I've read what was the first manga?
That was Flag of the Titans.
Attack of the
Okay,
Titans, yeah.
Yeah.
I've read some of that, yeah.
Did you read the manga or the light novel?
The manga, just because I
Okay.
needed pictures.
Yeah,
I read the
too many
light
words.
novel. I actually didn't even know there was a manga of it.
Yeah, I found it because I was actually looking for the light novel, and then there was a link to a translated version of the manga, and, yeah, so that's interesting. It would probably be worth looking at the novel because of all the details that it can get into, so
Oh, yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
good point. So, yeah, when I was thinking about this, this really does seem like the late UC or mid UC version of the debate that we were having about not Unicorn, Origin and,
Mhm.
Thunderbolt is like, they're both post 0080, so like Flag of the Titans is gonna be, 83 through 88, right? And,
Yeah.
Moon Gundam is like 88 to 91 roughly?
90 to 91. I guess, yeah,
90.
88. They go back a little bit, yeah, so,
So yeah,
yeah.
when I was thinking about it, like just looking at the mechanical designs is really what sold it for me is I'm like, okay, the Varwheel is a sweet design and it's very clearly inspired by the Zazabi. Like you can see that the visual language of these mobile suits is the same. But if I were to talk about, like, lineage and, like, the development tree that we're looking at, there is no way that this tiny Varguil becomes this massive Zazabi. Like, there's too many things that, like, for instance, the Varguil has, like, the typical, gold chest vents that a Gundam would have because it does, spoiler alert, become the Moon Gundam, so it's like it has to have that Gundamness to it,
Mhm,
which is conveniently edited out of the Zazabi. And you
mhm.
could argue that maybe the size of the Zazabi is because they added so much more into it, they talk about, like, the psycho frames and, like, it's got the, hyper mega particle cannon installed in its waist, so, like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, maybe
So
that
the
could account for
cockpit
the size.
then is moved? Yeah.
Yeah, the cockpit moves from the body to the head, um, but yeah, that doesn't explain, like, the need for massive leg skirts, right?
Yeah, because it seems
Right.
like the main thing is the silhouette. You know what I mean? Like, th
Exactly.
it's like you see the
It's
silhouettes,
the
like, "Okay, these must be related," but then if you look at the details, it's like, "Okay, then what were those lore implications that made the decisions to design the Sazabi in the way they did? Like, what is it from that silhouette that makes it worth designing something like that, but changing internals?" Yeah.
it's definitely the shoulder boosters. You look at those shoulder boosters,
Yeah.
they stand
Oh,
out,
yeah.
and they're just exactly like the Sazabi, like a slimmed down version of it. And that's what I think we were talking about the other day is that this looks like a slimmed down version of the Sazabi, even though this is pre Neo Xeon, newborn Neo Xeon stuff. So, which is weird, right? Like you said, this should be something you would expect unicorn era, maybe 96, 95 ish. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. Um, but I do love Ipe Gyobu, who is the mechanical
Yes.
designer for all of these, and I just did a video starting Witch from Mercury season 2, and Ipe Gyobu does like the Garibaldi in that, and a couple other designs.
Oh,
Really cool. I really like his kind of it's very technical, but, like, minimal at the same time. Like, if you look at, like, what are those, what are they called? The Japanese woodblock prints, where it's, like, flat, right? It has a flatness to it, but there's still a lot of
yeah.
depth in it. And that's what I get when I look at Ippei Gyobu's designs. It's like, it's very simple, you know, basic shapes, but if you look, closer, you get those, like, fine details, and it's very unique.
Yeah,
Then,
and
yeah.
well, and isn't it where he did some of the designs in Witch from Mercury?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, like the
so
Garibaldi and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, so, like, the Witch from Mercury differences I see is it's like it's almost there, but less of that. It's
Yeah.
almost like with these moon designs, it's a lot of, "Let's add all those panel lines." And you're right,
Mhm.
it's not like it's extra stuff, but it's extra detail to make it look like a machined weapon, like an aircraft, or
Yeah.
something like that. So, it's like, I really appreciate that design.
I think you nailed
Yeah.
it when you described it as the silhouette. Like, the silhouette is the same, but there's so
Mhm.
much depth of deep detail that's being added, and I guess we should, disclaimer, like, it's not like these designs are bad, like, I love the
Yeah,
designs from Moon Gundam, um,
me
but
too.
yeah, just insofar as, like, how do they fit into the timeline with what you see in Char's Counterattack, doesn't
Easy.
quite line up, right?
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, the timing's off. I always feel because remember this was, like, originally Moon Gundam and Unicorn were, like, one the thing at one point
Mm.
before they kind of, like, edited out the Moon Gundam stuff and made Unicorn its own thing. So I feel like if it was still I feel like if this was closer to, like, 96, I feel like you could take Amado out of Moon Gundam, you could take that out, it'd still be relatively the same for the most part, and put it, like, post, Neo Xeon, post Axis. I think that would work.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that this almost has that same, design language as, like, the Sinanju. Like,
Mhm.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a slimmer profile, it's definitely built, like, more for speed than power the way that the Zazabi evolution to the Sinanju, like, this
Mhm.
looks like what Full Frontal would have used.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
especially again with the designs of those extra panel lines. Like, it's not over designed, but it makes it really look like a machine.
Now, I will point
Yeah.
out a functional error with the Varguil is that the Zazabi has its propellant tanks stored directly on the backpack,
Mhm.
whereas the Varguil, the propellant tanks are actually attached to the funnel racks, which is
Oh,
kinda
yeah.
Really?
strange.
That is an interesting
Because then
That
it's like, wait, you mean to tell me that they have a fuel line running through underneath where the funnels are deployed? That's kind of a weird design choice. I mean, it looks cool, but functionally speaking, it's kind of awkward, right?
can't be
yeah.
aerodynamic either.
No.
Yeah.
But
Interesting
that's
choice.
that's me being nitpicky. Like, let's be honest, that's
Hey,
not.
but that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
what's the Hideo Kojima video game, robot video game? I can't Zone of Enders. He made the cockpit a literal cock. I mean, come on. Design-wise, they're people get crazy when it comes to mech designs.
Yeah. You gotta have fun with
So
it
and it's
sometimes for
cool, it's
sure.
cool. The rule of cool really, uh, is okay when it comes to this sometimes. Just looking cool is fine.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
absolutely. Now, so we have beaten up the poor Varguil and Moon Gundam designs to death. What would you guys say if you were, gonna pick out a mobile suit from Advance of Zeta that's, like, the number 1 offender? What would you guys say it is?
Woundwort?
Woundwort? I agree with you on that
Moonwort,
one.
yeah, I mean,
Everybody says
almost all of them.
Woundwort.
Well, yeah,
Eh
that one's probably the biggest offender for sure. Um, I don't know,
and
the
this is the one that
what
I did
else?
drop in the thumbnail, which shout out to Zeonic
Yeah.
Shadow, by the way. He designed today's thumbnail on the video, so,
Oh, hell yeah,
great
nice.
Whoa.
work.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Another one, you don't
Uh,
have to go to it yet,
Asimar,
but Hazenfree?
the
the
Hazel?
Hazenflee,
Which
yep.
Hazenflee.
one? There's, like, so many, right? Oh, the Hazen the oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one,
And
okay.
and some of the main things, like, I would point out by looking at this is when it comes to, like, design evolution from the time period, you see a lot of stuff from the Advance of Zeta or Hazel line, but if you look at this, nothing from this shouts out like 0079 at all. I mean, talking about like looking at it has legs, but the legs are completely different. Even the shape of the face, even though it
And
still has a V
somehow
fin.
it still works on Earth under gravity, like, with those spindly legs, somehow it still, I understand it's got giant thrusters, crammed up its butt, but, we talk about often, like, the Penelope and the Kasai Gundam, which required these massive,
Yeah.
Minovsky flight systems in order to maintain, their size under gravity, you know, with these types of spindly legs, even with the heels that flip out, like, you mean to tell me that this thing can support its own weight?
Yeah. And another thing that I'll let you go ahead, Kyle, because I could go on.
Okay. I was just gonna say, out of it, I just remembered the Primrose, which is the
Oh,
Mm,
Hazel's escape pod, which is the most advanced escape pod that turns into like a mobile armor, and it's crazy, and it's so over engineered. And then you go to Zeta, and they just escape in little balls,
yeah,
you know.
it's something that,
yeah,
like, Lord Talos Mobius has kinda helped me kind of understand this is like the Titans were like being able to throw money at anything, but at the end of the day, these things ended up being too expensive to continue. So that's why a lot of these are kind of like dead ends in the evolution of mobile suit development that we don't see in the future because it's just none of it in this way was practical. Um,
yeah.
so that could be
And
an
again,
excuse.
it's not to say that these
Yeah.
designs aren't cool looking. I love
Right.
personally like the hazels that have like the big kind
Mhm.
of skirt packs and things like that on them. I love a chunky mobile suit, but
Yeah.
how do you go from this to then like the Mark II?
Yeah.
That design tree
Yeah.
doesn't flow for me. And then, for me, I think you guys are gonna love this one. My example of the biggest like uh the opposite of a glow up. What would you call that? Like a glow down? Um, would be the
Dimmed down.
RX-107 Dandelion, which I
Dandy. Oh
recently
my god.
learned is actually the prototype version of the Boundock. So,
Oh,
like, they
wow.
adopted that same skirt design for the Boundock, and, so you take what was a Marasai that can transform into a mobile armor, and then it has the ability to purge the mobile armor and operate as a independent mobile suit. And then you remove that ability turn it into, like, a Gerwalker with the bound dock design, it loses the ability to purge the mobile armor skirt, so, like, then it's just a giant target, like,
Yep.
so
Right.
it's just evolutionarily speaking, it's a big design step backwards, and again, similar to the Varg wheel, it's like you can see where the design language is borrowed from what came technically after it in the timeline, but before it in like, chronological release order. So it's like, okay, we wanna make it look like it's a prototype bound dock, but we somehow made it more advanced than what the bound dock was.
It is advanced of Zeta.
Well, how many bound docks were there made total?
Good question.
Was there like 2?
There was, at least
As far as I know,
2
it's just the 2.
produced. Trying to
Okay.
think. I also called on my channel the Bound Dock, Robot Kangaroo, and I got so much hate for that. People love the Bound Dock. I didn't realize how many people love the Bound Dock.
Yeah, I know, I learned
Dude,
that from Steven.
yeah. Well, and so it's funny because, and this is one of those things where I don't know if it was I mean, it's definitely not an animation error because they would have fixed it, you know, since then. But what's interesting is that here on the wiki, which, you know, obviously, as far as wikis go, this one is one of the most notorious for having errors. But they have an alternate colorway that is supposedly Jared's version of the bound dock that actually never appears in the animation. And it's like inverted colors from what, or maybe
Oh,
did they get rid of it?
Mhm.
Oh, I think that, oh no, here it is. So this here, that like gold with pink accents, that is supposedly Jared's colors, but like
hmm,
clearly we
Hmm.
never see that. We only
Yeah,
ever see the black and pink and then the solid gray version that Gates Kappa uses.
right. So
so
there's
either
3 at
that was
least.
planned or it was part of, like, some other, like, video game or, because you know how sometimes they'll have, like, the planned mobile suits that never got made, but they were planned, these are the specs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this does look like some kind of official scan because it does have like, NRX 55, it's got like so this looks like it's from one of the, MS encyclopedias or something like that, but just interesting little tidbit about the old kangaroo here. Um, but yeah, so and again, you look at something like this that has so many exposed weak points compared to the things that came before it in Advance of Zeta, so it's kind of silly. But yeah, to your point, Adam, and like you said, Talos brought this up, is that yeah, maybe they were just kind of like trying everything that they could throw at a wall to see what sticks as far as like, prototype designs. But it's just interesting to me that it wasn't like they chose one design and said, "This is the one we're gonna go with." It's like, "You know what? All of these are too expensive, so we're gonna do something completely different."
Yeah, and it's like they threw money to create the craziest prototypes they could. They probably used them a bit, and they were like, "Well, I have this better idea. Let's do this now," because they were getting all that money to do whatever they could. Because yeah, this was the time period where it's after
Yeah.
the original 0079. The idea is, "Oh, there's Xeon remnants out there. We need to prepare." So the Earth Federation's like, "Okay, Titans, do whatever you need to do," and thus we get
That's what, like, my qualm is with this a little bit is, like, I get that. Say if you're regular old EFF, right? You have all these cool advanced prototypes, and they're so over-engineered, and they're so amazing, but we can't mass produce them. We can't do anything with them. What are we gonna do? This will cost us so much. The Titans, though, if someone comes up to Bask and goes, "This is gonna cost us money," Bask is just gonna throw a lot of money at his face and go, "Do it. Get the fuck out of my face."
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's a cool element of him because that's what kind of feeds into the Titans being the bad guy, and it's almost like maybe this was planned, I didn't think about it. Was this the way for the Greater Earth Federation to be able to separate themselves from the Titans? It's like, "Yeah, they're with us, but
Maybe.
oh, okay, they went crazy, we can separate, from them." I don't know.
So this actually kind of begs a question, is do you think that the Federation was more economically powerful in 0079 when they developed the original Gundam gun tank and gun cannon, or do you think that they had more money to throw at these things after the 1 Year War?
I think money is not an issue.
Mm.
Yeah, when
I
you can
really
print you can print the money and then, like, tax the colonies that you are then, like, you know
I think before Zeta or during 0079, it was more of, we don't need to necessarily go crazy all out with all these weapons. That's the pressure that caused Xeon to create their mobile suits as weapons. So then by the time, Earth Federation then had to like regroup and okay, so they were able to get back at them easily, even though it was kind of a delayed start to equal weaponry. But then after that, I think they were just like, well, there's money in this sector, so let's just continue this, you know.
Think about resources, right? In a time like this where money is mainly how do we fuel our resource needs, right?
Mm,
Most of the
yeah.
1 Year War was fueled and supplied by Luna 2. But we get to
Mhm.
Neo Zeon, there's a fifth Luna, right? So there that assumes there's 1 through 5 at least, right? So somewhere down the line, we found a lot of asteroids, put them in the Earth sphere, and just started mining them. I do think that resource-wise, I don't think that's a problem. I think money is solved. I think it's a manpower issue.
Mm. That explains a lot because it does seem like, you know, a lot of Xeon's wealth comes from Axis, right? Like, obviously, side three, oh, what's the city that
Oh yeah,
Munzo?
side
I,
3,
I'm,
can't think of
Zoom City?
I
is it Zoom City?
Zoom City, yeah.
But
Or Munzo before it becomes Xeon?
Moonzo, yeah, there you go. So yeah, before they became, I was like having a brain fart moment on Origin, but yeah, so like side three may have been the sort of political center of Xeon, but it does seem like a lot of their financial backing, their resources came from Axis, which I think is probably where you get and Kyle, you covered this more in depth, like the sort of aristocracy that was backing Xeon, where it was like
Yes.
Haman and Glemmy's family, like the Totos um, that were really like funding the Zabi's war for them. Um, if that was where their sort of economic strength came from, then yeah, Luna 2 and of course the moon itself, there was you between like Granada and Von Braun City also supplying the Earth Federation. Yeah, I think you're right. They probably do have even like just throughout all Universal Century, um
well,
they're resource rich.
so that's
Yeah.
interesting, especially Kyle, when you brought up the manpower, because Steven, you've brought up many times of like the toll of the war, like how many lives get lost, and almost to the
Yeah.
point where Earth became kind of like a post-apocalyptic center. And so that is something to take into account. Yeah. So how much of the manpower kind of dictates the evolution of some of these machines? And then even thinking Titans had Jupiter as well. Also, what I really like from a design is when you look at Axis or the asteroids and they look like they've been mined. It's like they're
Yeah.
mined
Mm.
to the point to where, okay, now this is the livable space. And it's interesting. What if that's a future story where people have to get displaced because the government comes and is like, well, we're going to mine the rest of this asteroid, so there's no more homes for
Yeah,
you
we
guys.
already
Sorry.
hollowed the thing out and put nuclear thrusters on the outside of it, you know.
Interesting stuff.
So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if I do think that the one of the primary impetus for Xeon to create mobile suits in the first place was a manpower issue, right? Like, they
Mhm.
didn't not only did they have a smaller fleet than the Federation, but like even just manning a battleship is much more difficult than manning, three mobile suits, which could take out a battleship with ease. So it was like I think that, yeah, you're right, it after the Federation kind of lost 2 fleets essentially because they lost, one fleet of, ships at the Battle of Loom and then another one at Solomon when,
Yeah.
during the naval review, it's
Yeah.
like they probably would start throwing resources into mobile suits or mobile armors, anything that's like a one-manned craft as opposed to massive battleships that need tons of staff to operate.
Yeah, and then you think of any time after 0079, especially with the Titans, and you would see that again, the people in power are seeing where there's money being made in war, and Anaheim Electronics is then building for anybody, so they're going to want to incentivize development and research and manpower. Yeah, so it allows this stuff to happen, even though you would think it wouldn't, due to the outcome of the war.
So in a
Yeah.
lot of ways.
Also,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna note, you mentioned kind of how like post kind of like all this nuclear craziness from the from Operation Stardust and whatnot. Um, what's it called? Like the Raylula and the Musaka from Newborn Neo Zeon and UC 93 era. They were no longer they were no longer big ships that stayed still like fortresses. They was
Exactly.
tinier. They moved around more, and they
Yep.
didn't stay still anymore. So yeah, I just once you mentioned that, it just brought that to mind, and I thought to bring that up.
That's a really good point.
Because the Guadin was the largest ship in UC, right?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that even though the General Revel, which was based on the Dogo Skier wasn't bigger than the Guadin.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But, yeah, and that's a see, so it sounds to me like you guys are kind of creating the case, which I'm inclined to agree with this, is that Advance of Zeta has the benefit of at least financially and motivationally speaking, the mech designs, the Gundam prototypes that they were coming out with make a lot more sense than what we would see in Moon Gundam when it's like, okay, the Titans remnants built a Psycho Gundam Mark IV using what resources exactly? Like, obviously they had lost all of their backing from the Federation because it was like
Anaheim.
post grips.
I mean, it could be whoever's building the machines are like, "Oh, you want a bit of this?" I mean, if you think too in Char's Counterattack of Amuro's team being provided with, Psycho Frame technology. Now that was more Char's doing, but I could see also there was an incentive for Anaheim to go through with that and to continue kind of that open relationship of technology. It's like, "Oh, this faction, is willing to pay for something like this. How can we get this to them?" So, yeah, I believe it.
it's possible. Yeah, they
Yeah,
did have
I think
also
that's
in. Oh, go ahead.
no, no,
I was gonna say they did have also in the plot to assassinate Giran, members of it wasn't Anaheim, but it was Zimad and Zionic. They were kind of like espionage kind of people, so
mm,
they exist. So I
Yeah.
imagine Anaheim Electronics had them as well. Just people kind of screwing over others or
And
trying
how
to.
many in Anaheim Electronics are just Zionic and Zimat?
Yeah, they
Kinda
could
like
just be
Operation
spies.
Paperclip, in the US when they
yeah,
got
Hmm.
the
exactly.
Nazi scientists to NASA.
Yeah,
Yeah, you guys know how to
True.
build rockets, right? Um, yeah, I mean, it would not surprise me the number of Zimad and Zionic scientists that kind of defected to Anaheim. And I suppose so then okay, so then that to me suggests that Anaheim circa Moon Gundam probably had more advanced technology and more resources to create the things that we see in Moon Gundam than when Anaheim first kind of appeared on the scene. Because correct me if I'm wrong, like when Anaheim Electronics didn't really become a thing until 0087 roughly, did they?
Oh, I don't know. Let's look.
87.
Let's pull it up here.
I thought it was 68. I could be wrong.
So
Uh,
prior to the One-Year War, produced numerous goods for both the Earth sphere and the colonies. Documents suggest that the Gun Cannon A and the Gundam were designed at Anaheim under the direction of Temray. So,
Yeah,
I'm
that
just like
means
trying to
that
think. Yeah, I mean, like, did Anaheim have the resources and capability of doing something like what you see in Advance of Zeta for the Titans?
yeah, I mean, they ate up Zionic at that
yeah.
time. Once the war was over, they ate him up. So whoever didn't flee to Axis or anywhere else, they now are a part of Anaheim Electronics, and that's I think the Hyzek, right, is the first
Oh, yeah. The
EFF
20
made mono eye Zionic kind of Zionic kind of informed design by EFF.
And it's beautiful to see the way that
Yeah.
evolves into, like, the Messer, which is, like,
Yeah.
again, mono eye, but has, like, this sort of Federation,
Some of the
uh
proportions kinda give it that feeling like it is a mix, you know? It's not too
yeah,
out there and curvy, but it has the curves that are,
Mhm.
with Xeon designs. You know?
And Advanced Zeta had the prototype version, right? Which was also
Yeah.
kind of a little too beefy, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so that
Um,
could be the thing, and I think the idea is, yeah, the, Titans come out with the Advance of Zeta, like, these crazy versions of these suits that in Zeta, we see less crazy versions of,
yeah.
with the idea that, okay, that would be way too expensive to produce at that scale, so we have to scale it back, you know, for it to be then used in Zeta, or
yeah.
by that
They
time. Um
they yeah, they also created a Hyzac Canon, I forgot about that. That was in
Yeah,
Advanced Zeta.
yeah, it was. See, and so that's interesting because we see a lot of that, even outside of just Moon Gundam and Advance of Zeta. Like when you look
Mhm.
at, for instance, just the Gundam to the GM. The GM was supposed to be like a mass-produced version of the Gundam. That's like, hey, clearly this prototype's too expensive to mass produce, so we strip it down.
Good
Um,
example.
but how does that explain something like going from the Hazel to the Mark II, which
Yes.
is
Well, I think
because
it's
then
because of the so here's the other aspect. So the Mark II was known for having that movable frame. Well, that was a new thing. Now,
yeah.
did that
Mhm.
start with the Hazel? And then maybe they were like, okay, by the time we need to, and I think they only made four Mark IIs. They were
Mhm.
probably like, okay, we've got this mass produced way to do it, where it has that movable frame, doesn't have all the extra features, and it's modularity, or I
Here's
don't
the
know.
thing though, the GM Quell, right,
Oh, yeah.
which is the Titans-made GM, has a movable frame. So that was introduced
Yeah.
at the beginning of Titan's existence. So they know of
A
the movable frame.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
and
so
the
I think
Hazel is
their idea
essentially a
was
GM Quell
taking
with a Gundam head.
But,
yeah, taking that technology, slimming it down, I feel like, obviously, there's out of universe explanations, but the idea is in
yeah,
Zeta, we're getting a look at the mainstream war. So in the mainstream war, we see the more mainstream mass-produced stuff. Advanced Zeta is a way to look at, okay, here's all the crazy prototype behind the scenes stuff, that was really going on. But then, and then even I think that even helps me actually wrap my head around Moon Gundam because yeah, if it's Anaheim Electronics, they've had all of these different scientists through the years. By the time you get to Moon Gundam, they can really do whatever. And then yeah, I wonder if there's a difference of here's a prototype versus here's what a ace is going to use in battle. So there's going to be a lot more modifications. So getting to the Sanzabi, it could be, well, if I'm gonna be in combat, I need this changed, etcetera.
You just highlighted a very important, difference that kinda comes up in that late UC era, which is the idea of ace units,
mhm,
which typically, like, during the One-Year War, during the Grips conflict, they didn't have necessarily ace units, like, maybe there would be a, "Hey, this ace pilot gets to use this prototype," or what have
Yeah,
you, but, just given the design lineage of, like, the Zazabi, for instance, where it was like, okay, well, we know that Shar is gonna, let's try and build him like the Yacht Doga, which is, it's got the Psychomu
like,
system. This is gonna be our ace unit for the captain. And it's like, no, it's not good enough for him for X, Y, and Z reasons. So this is why we need it to be, this. And so maybe that kind of helps explain the number of prototypes, if that makes sense, where it's like,
yep,
you're trying to create this emblematic, almost like you're trying to create a Gundam, whereas when the original RX-78-2 was
mm,
created, they were trying to create a prototype for a mass production unit that they were going to field, but
right.
then they realized, like, the propaganda benefit of having, like, that emblematic White Devil mobile suit, and so, like, by late UC, you're talking about, like, "Oh, well, we have to have the Sinanju or, the Rebawu," which is like, "We're gonna tweak this so that our commander can have this ace unit." Um, yeah, and so then it seems like you would have more and more of those prototypes of the ace unit, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. So I think the big thing here is of Anaheim really being the one in power when it comes to
Mm.
conflict, anything. They're going to make sure things go a certain way so they can design suits. And then Ace is coming to them wanting special suits. Like, think of how cool really the new Gundam was by that time. And there really wasn't anything else like it, you know, especially with that fin system. Like, I don't think,
Fin
other than
tunnels,
how the
yeah,
Moon Gundam looks, there's not many that had that same fin system as the new Gundam.
it's true. Those psycho plates on the Moon Gundam and the Psycho Gundam Mark IV are pretty interesting because they don't have any attachments to them. So, like, there's no Psychoma receiver on the plates. So it's kind of subtly hinting at the fact that the new types are just literally psychically moving it with its mind.
Oh, I see
Yeah,
what
I'm
you
glad
mean.
you brought that
Are
up.
you like, in comparison to, like, the binders on the Sazabi that has the
Like the
bits
binders,
inside?
even funnels have Psychoma receivers. It's like a radio receiver, it communicates with your
Yeah,
mobile suit and whatnot. Um, this has nothing. It has a battery, I think. It has a battery and thrusters.
and
That's
the
it.
extra antennas on the head that could be amplifying the brainwaves.
That too,
Like,
Exactly,
yeah.
that's a very good point
yeah.
because the Psycho Gundam Mark IV head is the only thing that can operate the plates, like,
Oh,
it's not
Right.
until the Varg wheel gets its head blown off that then it can operate with the plates using the Moon Gundam's head.
Yeah.
okay.
Interesting, okay.
It is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that concept. I wonder if they'll ever take that anywhere or if that was just an accident that no one wrote or that someone wrote on accident and didn't think of the kind of overall canon to
Right?
it.
That's a really good point. Because 'cause I'd
Well,
like
I
to see
mean,
if they
yeah,
explain that more. You can even
Most
if I
think
were
likely
of,
that.
playing devil's advocate, I would suggest that, yeah, like, of course they were planning it, come on.
well, like
But
the
no, I think that more than likely it was just like, "Eh, it looks cool."
and I would say even the unicorn V fin looks like it's psycho plates, and it
Mhm.
probably is. Oh, did you say it is for sure? 'Cause oh, I thought I heard someone say, but anyway, like, because you know how it, like, opens up like it's activating, and it's so there
Mm.
really is this kind of strong connection between having, yeah, that RF contraption that is amplifying the waves, and I wonder if it could be the same thing on this. Because look at that crest.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, this is a much more aggressive head crest on the Psycho Bawu than on the typical
Mhm.
Bawu. It almost looks like it reminds me of Yondu's fin from,
Oh, yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy. Um, and it's worth noting that this can only operate half of the G doors that the because right, that's only one half of the G
Yeah,
doors that
it's just a
from
little
the,
bit.
Hmm,
so, yeah, I mean,
interesting.
I think that probably the processing capacity of this fin compared to the twin fins on the Psycho Gundam Mark IV probably can only
That
control
can
a certain number of
to
Yeah.
things.
an Advanced of Zeta, and I forget what it's called. There's a wound wart that has a different V fin that's more of an elaborate style. I forget the
The
name of
Queenly?
that. What's that?
Is it the Queenly? The one that's got
Maybe.
it's almost like a fancy,
It looks like a biblical style. I don't know how to really describe it.
yeah,
Not there, but that looks crazy. Although it could be in it, because I think that's one of those things where it's, oh, the Inley.
Is it the Raw?
and yeah, that I was gonna say, I know
Let me
which
look
one you're
that up.
talking about, it's almost got like that, it's like one of those, fancy ladies that you would have on the front of a ship.
Yeah, yeah, that's a
Oh.
good way to explain it. Man, what is that thing called?
I could have sworn it was the Queenly, which
Kinda
again, this thing is absolutely ridiculous.
yeah, this thing
Yeah,
is insane, man.
Um,
hold on. I'm gonna look that up, because, like, for instance, I have the model
Mhm.
kit or the robot spirits of one, but it doesn't have that part on it because I think it was like an upgrade later on. Um,
oh, yeah.
I'm gonna search it because that's gonna bother me
Yeah,
if I
I
don't.
I know, I always forget I always forget which one is it the Woundwort Ra,
That's what I
maybe?
said thought. It looks like the Raw, or it sounds like the Raw from what he was explaining, but
Um,
maybe not.
No, it's one of those variants.
Yeah, which, of course, there's only a trillion hazels and woundworts, like,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
um,
yeah, I don't know, and usually chat, I think chat knows what we're talking about, but yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's like,
yeah, because I was gonna say,
Where'd it go?
Zeonic Shadow calls it the Rolls-Royce V-fin, Jam Calix said it has a figurehead. That's what it's called, when you have, like, a mermaid on the front of a ship. It's on the bow of a ship.
ah, okay.
Mm.
Yeah, we'll have to get a name for that because anyway, back to the point of that is I think that could be another example of over designing these V-fins for the purpose of, psycho wave amplification. So,
Yeah, and just presentation. I mean, like,
yeah.
that
True.
that has a very regal aspect to it that you don't see from most mobile suit designs.
Yeah, I
So
wonder how
now that
much
we've
they
kind of
took sorry, I
no,
wonder
no,
how
go
much
ahead.
they took, like, because yeah, you're right, how, like, the look of the Gundam, that was to scare people and use that as propaganda,
Mhm.
and then how much of that was leveraging there we go. That
That's
was
it.
what I was talking about. But leveraging the placement of the V-fin and its purpose, aesthetically to then integrate a functionality into it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, that would be ideal when you can marry fashion and function into the same, into the same use case.
Yeah.
But, usually it's a difficult ask.
Wonder what
So
But,
function those boobs have.
there you go. Uh,
so that is a wound wart, but yeah, I guess a certain type. Um,
yeah, I forget which variant of the wound wart this is.
yeah.
And, yeah, Jeffrey Williams says it's the wound wart on the inlay had a fancy headpiece, which
Mm,
yeah.
okay.
But, yeah, so now that
Yeah.
we've kind of talked about it a little bit more, do you guys feel like your opinions have changed over which of these 2 series are, more, yeah, I don't wanna say damaging to UC lore, but how do you feel about it?
I could be biased because I always try to look at the possibilities and everything, but I feel after this discussion too, I feel stronger about Advanced Zeta line can exist. Even the Moon line can exist considering where Anaheim was at that time. So, that's my take. Kyle?
Yeah, I think for the most part, Advance of Z exists in its own pocket, and that's cool. And there's even some narrative reasons, money, etc. I don't believe them so much, and some of these designs kind of break my head to make me think that moving forward they would be so different. But they exist in a kind of its own thing, um, and they're even on what's it called? Solomon post taking it over, which you don't really hear too much happening on. What is it called when EFF take Pohnpei Island?
Oh, yeah.
Once they take it, so it's like in a perfect place because there's not really anything happening there, at least in the stories at that time. So it's kind of even hidden in its own area. So that's cool.
And I was just
Um,
looking up the wound wart, and it says it was developed, the manufacturer is Conpeito Arsenal.
yeah,
So, it's
so
Yeah.
similar
that's
to the
part of the
name.
island. So they developed
Yeah,
it there. Yeah.
and yeah, interesting,
So, yeah, not even Anaheim. So that's a very good, point, when we were
yeah.
talking about, like, oh, well, Anaheim Electronics was responsible for building all these prototypes, it's like, some of the worst offenders, Anaheim wasn't responsible for, which makes
So
sense
that
because Anaheim was, caught up with Project Z, or, well, the Zeta project.
and
Zeta
then that
Project.
could
Yeah.
explain why maybe some of the crazier features of the Zeta line or Advanced of Titans didn't necessarily fold into the other development after that period. Um, what do you call the post Titans period? Is there like a name for just like after Titans? Or maybe it's not distinguished in that way.
Post Grips, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Postscripts. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that yeah, just to call that out because sometimes when talking, I like to, like, reference the era to, like,
Yeah.
understand, and I think Post Grips is a good one. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's tough sometimes because, like, the Grips conflict spans for I think as far as, like, wars in the universal century go, the Grips conflict definitely spans the longest out of everything that we've seen, like, the One Year War is the One-Year War, and,
Yeah.
Char's rebellion, occurs over the course of what, like, 7 months?
Yeah.
Um, but, uh but yeah, I mean, the Grips conflict goes from, like, basically 0084 in Advance of Zeta all the way through 0088 after
Yeah.
Haman is killed, so and then
Interesting.
even that, like, would you consider that would you consider that the did the Grips conflict end in '88, or did it end in '87 and then the Neo-Zeon War started in '88?
I think, like,
87.
we as outside viewers could see the difference, right? But I think if you were in this world, it would just be one big mess to
Yeah,
you if you're just a
that's
regular
right.
citizen.
Because that's
Yeah.
That's a
generations, even, within the decades, that's generations of people having to live by the same crap. Sometimes they joke about that now with millennials, how we went through, like,
yeah.
9/11, the first recession, COVID, like, they
Please stop with the character building. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a good point.
Interesting. So, I mean, from my perspective, I still think that Moon Gundam is more plausible as far as,
Mhm.
what fits in the lore because there aren't too many. Like, quantitatively speaking, there are only a few awkward prototypes in Moon
Yeah.
Gundam. Honestly, the thing that stands out from Moon Gundam more than anything that breaks the lore is just Amuro Ray being a part of it. Um,
Oh. Yeah, and
but
then there's, like, a designed DJ, for a Moon style designed DJ. The
yeah,
Jeddah actually is from Moon, isn't it? The or not,
yeah, I think so.
The
Like
Jeddah.
prototype, yeah, the Jeddah, which then becomes the Jagan, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, it goes it skips straight to Jeddah canon, which
Jeddah
I'm sure,
cannon.
you
Oh,
GBO2, fans are obviously,
What is your opinion in Moon Gundam
experiencing some
on what is your opinion in Moon Gundam on Theta Plus? You think that's fitting? You think that should have been I'm curious because it goes to just a random Londo Bell pilot, Saphir, who's introduced into this, series. Do you think that fits? Do you think that should have been a someone else? I think it
well,
fits so far, but I'm still not 100% on it because it's kind of like she's a part of Londo Bell, but she's kind of like still a part of the Raw Gills type of thing.
and I think that speaks to what happens when weapons are being produced. It's almost like it will go to whoever is gonna pay for it. I'm just assuming that's what that is because I know what you mean, where sometimes it seems like, why would they get something that looks like this, and then they get something that looks like this? And,
Mhm.
um,
yeah, Anaheim over here playing favorites with everybody and, like
yeah, it's neat. I'm
it's,
seeing strong Wave Rider vibes from
It's
the, VFIM.
it's
I
The
mean,
Sunny
it's
essentially the
basically
final
like
version of Double Zeta, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's like they took the Faz and then slapped the Zeta's wing binders on it. Which, as far as, like, where it fits in the timeline, this makes more sense than the Varguil because this would be like,
yeah.
if you were to take the double Zeta and then, like, iterate
Yeah.
on that, then you might get something like this, as opposed to taking, like, the Varguil and iterate on that, you probably wouldn't go to the Zazabi, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah, timeline-wise, it does fit.
Yeah,
I
I feel
think it's
like it's the
more
best of the Zeta and the double Zeta looking at this.
definitely.
Yeah.
Plus, you could disassemble it into its core fighter without an Eno or a Mondo. You don't need those assholes to help you. You can just do it all by yourself now. It's
Uh,
Ugh,
great. It's great.
don't dog on Eno, he was a good guy.
True,
Had a
true.
he had everybody's
Yeah,
best
he was
and he got to
he
pilot
tried to
the
bring
best
everyone
version of the Zeta,
together.
um, the Zaku Zeta. But, yeah, like I said, I think that this is far less offensive to me than even just the sheer number of hazels and wound warts that we get. And then, like, even if you were
Yeah.
to take some of the direct through lines, like, for instance, the Gaplant, um, you know, the
Oh, all the
Gaplant
variants.
fiber,
About those, yeah. There's, like, the
let's
Fiver,
see.
and what else is there? There's, like,
Oh,
5 of them, 'em, isn't there?
yeah, the
yeah.
The
Gaplant,
Fiver, the Cryo,
which, again,
Wild.
Rwanda version, yeah.
The whole like, again, like, the Hazel line is kind of silly when you see, like, just how many RX-124s there are, and, like, none of them have really distinctive names to separate them. It's all just like, well, that one is massive, and this one's just like a regular mobile suit. Um, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
like, the standard, uh, uh, Gap Plant TR5, you can see where this theoretically, like, I can see how this would, evolve into the standard gap plant that you see in Zeta. But then, like, how do you go from this to then the fiver and then back up to
and then
to
and
the
from what
suit?
I understand
Yeah.
too, a lot of times is there's the base body, like a gap plant, for instance, and a lot of what we're seeing from Advanced Zeta are just modular add-on parts that then make it then it's this unit because it has all this. And then maybe
Yeah,
they'll strip that, put it on other things. Because if you notice, a lot of times the added on parts between the Advanced of Zeta style mobile suits have very similar thrusters, very similar like weaponry or those heat
that shield
blades.
binder look that the Hazel
Yeah.
has.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that, like, within Advance of Zeta, they tend to do that really well. I'm gonna, give them credit here where it's due, where it's like everything that's within Advance of Zeta looks like it fits together extremely well, not only from color palettes, but also as far as like you said, the modular components that it's like, oh yeah, I see how like this piece that fits on the wound wart also fits on the Hazel, and that's why there's these two variants of both of those suits, right?
Yeah.
But then like how you reconcile that with what you see in the Zeta anime is like, well,
Yeah.
it makes me wonder, like, shoot, why didn't they do that with something like the Marisai, which they did mass produce? Is like, why didn't they have more modular units of like the Hyzak and the
Yeah.
Marisai that they had tons of? But I don't know. I don't have
I
an
think
answer for you on that.
the other thing I think from Lord Talos explained to me is that modulation was expensive because
Mm,
they were trying to get the
Mm.
best out, and sometimes they had to build these systems separately and then add them on, and then that just became a cumbersome task, especially if they were gonna mass produce. Because that's what's interesting, I think even though we see, like, a mobile suit and then its next version, it's technically the same mobile suit, just with different parts added on.
yeah,
So it's not like a whole
yeah, I
new
see what
suit
you're
that they
saying,
developed.
It
and I
could
can
be like I was gonna say it could be like a situation where you know how the what is it the F-35 is like made in like 20 different states. Each part there's like too many working parts to make the
Oh,
F-20, and that's why it's like such an expensive, overbloated like fighter jet. Is that it's just all outsourced everywhere. I wonder if that's
oh,
kind of like
yeah.
a similar thing. They're just
That's a
everyone's
cool
making
point.
parts and no one has a like kind of a core foundation.
Yeah,
yeah.
I believe
Well, and
that.
you have to imagine that every modular piece that you design creates a weak point in the machine where it's like,
Mhm.
you know,
Oh, yeah.
if like, you think about just computer peripherals, like how many times do you guys and I have problems with just like our USB mics or our webcams and stuff like that? It's like, imagine that level, but like with the complexity of a mobile suit, and it's like, okay, I have this giant shield binder that all of a sudden stopped working because, and it's not like you can unplug it and restart in the middle of a fight.
Yeah, and that it
Yeah,
actually happens in GBO2. Depending on the advanced SATA suit you're using, it's extra thrust could give you extra thrust or shields, and if you lose it in battle, your mobile suit then functions differently.
interesting.
So,
There you
yeah.
go. So now I want
Okay,
to take it to the chat because I did drop a poll in chat that just to see what everyone thought here, and it looks like it's a very slight majority, but 58% of people thinks 58% of people think that Moon Gundam is more damaging to UC Canon than Advance of Zeta.
interesting.
Interesting stuff. Now, I only got one
Mm,
comment on my post on, the YouTube community tab a couple days ago, and that one said Advance of Zeta, hands down, but didn't elaborate on it. So shout out to Night Captain for actually commenting on
Oh,
my post. Everyone else just liked it. They probably just liked the image because it was like the Moon Gundam and the Wound Wart. Like, oh,
or
this is cool.
like the idea for a topic, because I found that intriguing. Because I wouldn't know. At first I don't know, but yeah, talking with you guys, it really kind of helped me understand what I think.
I mean, that really is what this show is all about. It's like group therapy for guys. It's like,
Yeah.
Is the secret to male loneliness talking about mecha on
Yeah.
on YouTube with your friends? Yeah, I think
Welcome
so.
to Alpha Male Talk, everyone. But for
Yeah,
me,
break out of the
personally, just
matrix.
based off of what we just experienced here, I would say Advanced of Zeta, just because we couldn't figure out what names of which mobile suit of the
Oh,
one
yeah.
more. We're like, is it this? Is it that? I'm just based off of that. I'm going to say the collective room is saying is it's Advanced of Zeta, just because of how ridiculous it is, right? Because you don't if there's two things that are like so similar in functionality and design that you can't, I guess, separate them. If they want us to buy toys, if I only have to buy one because they look so similar, let's talk in Bandai talk,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Everything is like a hazel, and then things are added on top of that. You get all the different packs, all the different parts. Yeah.
That's how they get
Well, it's
you.
like we
Yeah.
talked about on the, Free Speech Geekly, weekly podcast here on Monday, where it was like over on Free Speech Geek. If you guys haven't subbed over there, go check that show out from this Monday. That was a lot of fun. But we talked about, like, the number of Batman toys that came out during, like, especially during Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. Like,
Yeah.
they had
Mm,
an absurd number of Batmans that weren't in the movie.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
So yeah,
yeah,
there's an aspect of selling variants of the toys to it. But Adam, I suspect that you still think Moon Gundam is the one that's, the worst offender.
You know what? I don't know. After talking through this, I think they both make sense, and I can't really decide on a worse offender.
that's
Interesting.
and that's why you keep your cannon loose, Marvel.
Oh
There you go.
yeah, that's
Exactly
that's a
right.
good point. As much as we want answers for everything, keeping it open ended makes it where people aren't making like absolute like decisions or whatever, picking a
Yeah.
side or something.
And
Yeah,
I mean, come on, it helps us YouTubers and all the guys that are creating these lore channels and like, hey, can
Yeah,
I start my Gundam theory podcast?
yeah, yeah. This stuff
Where
is
we
fun.
talk about this stuff and debate it. Because I mean, that's the same thing, and I always draw this comparison between Gundam and Legend of Zelda because Legend of Zelda has the same sort of ambiguity around its lore that allows for different interpretations. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
but on that note, I do want to end the show with this chat from Dan Vince. The cure to male loneliness is 100% hobby talk. So,
Yeah.
hopefully, you guys have enjoyed your daily dose of the cure for male loneliness today. I appreciate you guys hanging out in the chat and checking out this discussion. As always, did we find a definitive answer? No, but that's kind of what the fun of it is. We
I
all
learned a
have our
lot about
opinions.
different mobile suits, and that's what I'm here
Yeah,
for.
I think I have more questions than answers now. Like,
right.
Yeah, exactly.
um, so yeah, that said, if you have not checked out Adam's video from this morning, you went through some more whoa,
IBO.
IBO, yeah,
Yeah.
because Mikazuki doesn't know how to read a Gundam manual.
Yeah.
Which, you know what? Like, come on, every Gundam protagonist has to read the manual at some point.
It's
Right.
funny because he didn't have to, yet he's a badass, you know? Like, I love that the story implications there, his literacy. It's interesting.
Yeah. Only losers read is really what I got from that.
Yeah.
But no, thank you, Kyle, for joining us today, and
Yeah,
again, guys, definitely go check out our chat from Monday over on Free Speech Geek.
yeah.
We will got the Gundam Explained show tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central, so definitely tune in for that. Until then, I will catch you guys next week. Oh, and by the way, first of the month tomorrow, which means Patreon perk goes out. There's a little spoiler hint in my background here as to what this month's perk is going to be. So yeah, thank you guys so
Oh,
much. Appreciate the support.
nice.
Thank you for keeping the chat lively, and we will catch you next week.
See ya.
See ya.
Cheers.